Those 5 language patterns can be used every day whenever you want to influence somebody you would like to impress, seduce, sell something to, or just help. Because whenever you have a client in coaching, for example, who is just not really receptive to what you say, those are great things to tell them so that they become more receptive and they act upon the lessons you are giving to them. And those will also help you to get rid of manipulators or notice negative people and get out of those situations whenever you want to get out of it. Pattern number 1, mostly for positive situations where you have an intent to help, it is, I am wondering what would happen if this could change by tomorrow. So whenever you want to help somebody in a therapy session and coaching, for example, and you really can't get to anything with that person. That also can be used with yourself when you write in your journal, for example, and you want to find some breakthrough. So let's analyze this language pattern. I am wondering what would happen if. I am wondering is an embedded question coming from the Milton model. An embedded question is basically when something is too difficult or too confrontational to ask to the person directly. I am wondering if it is helping to decrease the potential level of resistance that person might have. For example, if it is in a personal relationship and you may know that there is one topic that is really controversial or maybe confrontational with that person, you may sugarcoat what you say, your question with I am wondering if, and I am wondering what would happen if this could change by tomorrow. It is just basically the question, if tomorrow this was gone, what would you do then? So somebody who is endlessly complaining, okay, if by tomorrow this was done, what would you do then? And the most likely answer you receive when you say that is, oh, I can't because it is not that easy, because the government, because the weather, because my parents won't let me, because whatever. And if you use that same exact suggestion that tomorrow your problems will be gone in an embedded question, what would happen if, it decreases the level of resistance because it is now a fictional idea. And a fictional idea is much less resisted than something tangible people can really clearly grasp, with which they might argue with you forever, whereas an embedded question is bypassing their filters and going into their unconscious mind much more easily. Language pattern number 2 is, in the future, this problem won't even matter because. So that is another one I like to, end useless conflicts or useless arguments when somebody is just angry and just trying to unload their anger, which is a no-go with me. Like if you do that one time, you're out. But on the moment, I still need to get out of the situation and calm down the person if it is in a group. So in that situation, for example, that is an example of something that could be said. In the future, this problem won't even matter because no one else will be there anyway. That was a great quote from Naval Ravikant, I think, where basically he enumerated a small story like in one generation from now, you may not even live in the same house, in the same place anymore. 2 generations from now, people may not even remember your name. 5 generations from now, the city you live in may not even exist anymore. And 10 generations from now, and on, and the human rights, the country you live into may not even be the same country anymore. So many things like that stacking up on each other. And when I heard that the first time, it really made me a shock in terms of, okay, my struggles right now, why do I care so much, basically? And that is a language pattern you can use too in that situation. In the future, the things you complain about, no one will even care about this. And if they argue back with, oh, but like maybe 10 years from now, when this president will be in the country and he will fuck up the whole country more than right now, you will remember this conversation. And you might say, sure, and in 3 generations from now, no one will even remember your name or the name of that president you complain about, not even your grandsons and grandchildren. So can we go to a side of a conversation where you complain less and where you give me your full attention and start to shut down all your critics internally and start a more positive mood? Is that possible? Did you think about that for a minute? Language pattern number 3, what prevents you from stopping this right now? I really love to use that one coming from the MED model. What prevents prevents you from? Whenever people say they are stuck, they can't, specifically when they use a modal operator like can't, could not, would not, should not, all those things, I can't. For example, I can't change, I can't quit my job. What stops you from doing it right now? Or like, oh, I have to give, 2 weeks appointment, whatever. Okay, what stops you from putting on that appointment right now? I need 3 months to pack my... Okay, what prevents you from starting this 3 months period right now? And at some point you are going to get to the real thing, which most likely is a deeper fear. It might be the fear of homelessness, the fear of losing somebody, and there we can work on something real. Whereas staying on the surface level of an argument or a conversation, even when you just want to help a friend, staying on the surface level will most likely lead into surface solutions that won't really bring real results. But if you dig deep enough with questions like what stops you from, what prevents you from acting upon this right now? Oh, I'm waiting to be ready. What prevents you from being ready right now? Maybe not today, but like 1 week from now, 2 days from now. What stops you from using all those things, this main project you really wish you could start right now? What prevents you from starting with this within the next week, within this week, eventually, before Sunday this week? What prevents you from doing that? And they will give you a more quality answer to which you can use again. Like if they say, because no one will listen to me, what prevents you from learning the skills that will make you people listen to you? Oh, it's not that easy. What prevents you from turning that into something that can be easy? You don't understand. What prevents you from explaining it to me so that I can understand? You can always play that game, and I used to play that game with friends back in the day. I would tell them beforehand, I'm going to be a dick for a minute, and then I would play that game, but in the end it was helpful, because then we would really get into a serious thing they were scared about or uncomfortable about, and that was the thing we had to talk about, the real problem, not the surface like, yeah, my boss doesn't like me, people don't like me. Those things are never really that important. What is important is the deeper fear or the deeper scar, the deeper wound people may be carrying inside themselves that you can eventually help them with when you have the right tools. Language pattern number 4 is to make people change their mind on something they seem to be so stubborn and so stuck onto that there is not even a conversation possible. The language pattern is I used to think the exact same way as you, Robert, for example, and after I heard this, I completely changed my mind. Or after I read that article from Naval Ravikant, or after I heard that article from Bill Gates or whatever, you can just name any source that you have encountered recently. After I learned about this, I completely changed my mind. The main concept that is hidden behind this language pattern is the pacing and leading, which is a very known concept in any sort of sales training or persuasion techniques of any kind, actually. When you first agree with somebody and then lead their opinion in some other direction, they will resist much less than if you try to brutally confront their ideas with something that you say is more valuable and more valid than theirs. If you start from this bullying attitude of no, you're wrong, I'm right, guess what? They will do exactly the same thing as you, as a mirror. And if they did that first with you, then using that language pattern will cancel their aggressiveness and will make them more attentive to what you say, at the very least. Because now at least you have piqued their curiosity. They may still not agree at this first sentence, but at least you have piqued their curiosity. Now they are going to listen to you much more. So if somebody who might disagree that, for example, if I was to argue with, capitalism can also have good things into it, there are some shady oil bankers who will just rip people off. This does exist. I'm not contradicting that. I'm only saying that capitalism is also a great way to expand novelty, to expand people's competence in many different fields and ways. I could argue about that, for example. And if the person is just stuck on, no, communism is the only right thing, or like socialism is the only right thing, whatever is the topic, I could just say, you know what, before I really had the same opinion as you. I was really believing in socialism. And there is only one thing, actually one movie I saw one day that made me realize I had to change my mind. And after I told you what it was about, you will maybe change your mind too. And then you pause. You just let them process. If they just stare at you like they're waiting for you to proceed, to continue, then you know the door is open, and whatever you're going to say next, it may not even be coming from a movie you saw, whatever. But when you have their attention like that, everything you say is going to go unconscious much more easily than if you just brutally spit it out like this, like facts, oh, you're wrong because blah, 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 and they won't even listen. But if you pause like this and tell them, after I told you about this article I read on Medium, you will definitely have a different perspective on this matter. Do you want to hear about it? And then you wait. You let them process the possibility that maybe they could change their mind or at least alter their perspective. So to summarize on this one, pacing and leading, I used to think like you and I changed after I read this or that. And after I told you what it was about, you may change your mind too. Don't use strong language like you will change because they might be resistant with this, but you could change eventually your mind. Maybe you will have a different perspective. This is pretty okay to use that in a conversation, even with somebody who is just stubborn or stuck-minded. You may still use that because it will be enough in many cases to at least make them decrease their level of assertiveness about the things they are talking about. Language pattern number 5, before you can remove this problem from your life, what do you think needs to happen first? So we have two main presuppositions here. The first one is that the main thing you're complaining about, mostly if it is a client in therapy, for example, the main thing they think they are completely stuck with, the main presupposition is that this will be gone at some point by using the time frame before. Before you is a strong presupposition that it will happen. Opposite to if I had just said, is it possible that it changes someday? In which case the person might just say, no, it won't change. But if you say, before this can change for good, what do you think needs to happen first? In that case, first of all, just to understand what you just said, they will have to make a representation in their mind, in the back of their mind, of the thing you just talked about, the idea you proposed, which is the idea that their problem could actually change, could actually be gone for good. If someone says, I have been addicted to cigarettes or any other kind of addiction for 20 years, no possibility I can ever change that. Before you can change that for good, what do you think needs to happen first? If you already have a good enough level of rapport, they will pause and reflect. Because now you have been asking a question, you have been redirecting their resistance by asking an open-ended question. What do you think needs to happen first? And therefore the second main presupposition in that phrase is the word first, which is a quantifying presupposition, I think, from the Milton model, something like this, or ordinal number presupposition, linguistic presuppositions from also the Chomsky's grammar. Basically, using the word first, what needs to happen first is the presupposition that there will be other steps. So you're not arguing anymore about is it possible or not. You are arguing about how many steps will it take, which is a massive quantum leap for somebody who thought their case was just done, there was nothing else to do. Now if you tell them that and they ponder on the question, they reflect about it, now you have opened their mind on the possibility that actually it is possible, and it will be a specific number of steps before the term in the beginning of the phrase, before they actually get to that point where their addiction or whatever is gone for good. And once the idea popped up in their mind, just like the movie Inception, once you have made their mind reflect upon it, during the dreams they make the nights after, their mind will keep reshaping, articulating itself around this new concept, this idea. So using just one of those may not be enough, but when you use many of those language patterns in the same conversation, usually it's like turning around, trying to break a big strong stone, really hard to break. At some point, when you keep using different texture to hit it on different spots of the stone, at some point one side is going to break. That is how limiting beliefs work. Limiting beliefs are really strong, held in stone, and when you keep turning around the stone like this with different phrases, different angles, so what would it be like if somehow by tomorrow this could change and it is not possible? Oh, I get you, it is really not possible. What do you think stops you from making that something that is possible right now? if there was a way by tomorrow, that tomorrow, like 2 days from now, you could find a magical solution that would just pop up in your mind and you would find a way to go through this tough period you're suffering from in your life right now. What would happen after you have been going through that period? Who else would be affected? And blah, blah, blah. You can just improvise with that once you are advanced enough with it. And at some point, the person is going to let go of something. Let go of at least one side of their opinion, their assumption, or their limiting belief. If it is in coaching or therapy, they are going to shift their perspective at least a little bit. And those 5 language patterns I just talked about so far are part of the new course I just published on my website. You can find it down below. It is a course about how to practice NLP language patterns with a simple method. 12 minutes per day are more than enough. When I did that, I learned in maybe 2 or 3 months using this method, like maybe 3 times a week. So 12 minutes a day, 3 times a week, it's not going to kill your whole schedule. I know you are a busy person, you can't find 30 seconds in your whole day, but I'm pretty sure you can find some spot somewhere so that you will make that a reality and use those skills for real with the people you need to influence right now. Aside from those 5 patterns, you have 30 more in the program down below, and everything is explained really step by step, how to use this one, that one, why does it work that way, what is the common structure, because it is more about understanding the structure behind it than really memorizing consciously, which is a complete waste of time. It is about understanding the structure behind all of them, at least each of the main categories. There are 5 main categories of patterns. Once you have really grasped the concepts behind each of those 5, then you can improvise. It's more about the concept and how to adapt it based on how the person feels in that moment. Because knowing when to use a specific pattern is much more important than how you say it. You may shorten the phrases, you may use the longer phrases with the same concept. The consequence pattern from Sleight of Mouth, you can use that in a very short sentence. What will you do tomorrow? That's a very short sentence. If eventually someday in the future there could be a way that somebody else arrives into your life and finds a solution you didn't think about, would it be a possible scenario? Same thing, consequence pattern, but a very long sentence, which will not be required in most cases, unless it is a really super tough resistant client that you need to sugarcoat everything you say, but in most cases it won't even be relevant. Once you have the concept in mind, everything becomes more intuitive. And once you have the basic idea of all those main language patterns you will need to use, there is in lesson 3 of this course a series of videos that teach you how to deconstruct the moment of the conversation when you are in a conversation, whether it is a therapeutic conversation, whether it is a sales presentation, or anything in between where you have to sell, persuade, or help somebody in any sort of way, or even yourself sometimes, how to notice, how to understand where the person is on the ladder, let's say on the ladder of permissiveness, the ladder of receptiveness, how receptive they are. You are going to adapt and not use the same exact language patterns based on if you are at level 1, level 2, or level 3. All of this is explained in the course and letting you know which specific body language signals. You don't need to be an FBI expert to read that, but just a certain kind of body language signals you can stay aware for, so that whenever you spot that, you can know which language pattern to use because you have just spotted in which state they were at that moment. And from that perspective, you can influence people way faster, specifically because you will tell them the right thing at the right time and not waste your effort on something that is just not working at all because the person is not receptive enough yet, and you will have much more than enough language patterns to work with, because many people just get stuck after the 2 first phrases they said. With those 30, you have more than enough to handle any sort of conversation, even really tough ones, even the ones you didn't really feel confident into so far. You will have more than enough to work with anybody at any time if you put in the work. Of course, it is not a fake promise. You do have to practice and do the exercises, which doesn't require a partner or anybody. It can just be by yourself and then in your daily interactions anyway. This is down below ready for you if you want to check that, and I will see you pretty soon in the next video.